And thank you to all of you for being here in practice together. Let's begin right into taking a few full deep breaths as we arrive together. Allowing ourselves to receive this beautiful, strong aliveness, vitality and sweetness on the inhale. And on the exhale, letting go, letting go. Today is a tender day. As Mark mentioned, it's Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, a day of zikaron, of memory and of mourning for those who died fighting for the state of Israel, for those who were killed in terrorist attacks. And yesterday I watched online the joint Israeli-Palestinian memorial ceremony that was held in Tel Aviv. And this is a ceremony that's been going on for a number of years now, that engages with Yom HaZikaron as a day to mourn the deaths of both Israelis and Palestinians who've been killed in the cycles of violence, of conflict and war. You know, as I watched, I could feel in myself and I could sense, as I looked at the faces, the sea of faces, how meaningful this gathering was right now in the context of the extremism that's been erupting in Israel and the violence and the deaths that we've seen in the past months. It was rather stunning. There were over 15,000 Israelis and Palestinians present in person. 15,000. And there were thousands of people joining online from all over the world to be together in empathy and in heartbreak and in connection. And as bereaved family members shared their stories, stories of love and of home, and the deaths of their siblings and parents and children, it was palpable to me how inseparably interwoven the lives of these two peoples are. And I mean that politically, and I mean that spiritually. And I want to touch in today to the spiritual meaning in particular of what it means for lives to be interwoven inseparably. I was sitting in my living room here in Toronto with tears rolling down my cheeks and thinking of my Israeli friends and my Palestinian friends. And I could feel and I could remember how inseparably interwoven all our lives are. All life is. I want to spend my life waking up to that truth. How inseparably interwoven all life is, and how that then calls on me to act in the world when I'm saturated in that truth. I see faces that are familiar in this Zoom room, and I see some new faces. And I'm really grateful for us being together today in practice. You know, practicing presence, to be able to be with the complex, mixed feelings and relationships that may be present for us as we mark Yom HaZikaron, touching grief and loss, anger, confusion, hope, maybe feeling distant and disconnected, maybe feeling closeness and pained kinship. And all of it in the embrace of our shared humanity, our shared and precious holy life. So, what I want to offer for our meditation practice today is a movement between two intentions, two phrases. One is about zikaron, memory and memorializing, and the other is about blessing and shared being. So, if you're not already sitting in practice, I invite you to do that now, feeling supported by the seat you're in. Your eyes can be closed or your gaze can be soft. And you're welcome to take this invitation lightly. If it's not the right invitation for you, just bring your attention to your breath or sounds or sensations in the body, being present together. But here's my offering. I invite you to call to mind either someone you know or individuals or groups that you know of who have died in the violence of the conflict, and to touch that calling to mind with the words either I remember you, or borrowing from the liturgy of High Holidays, Eila ezkera, these I remember. Eila ezkera, these I remember. And to gently be with whatever arises in the silence. It's okay if you can't access particular people. Just see what the words of zikaron, of touching memory and memorializing, might surface. I remember you. Eile ezkera, these I remember. Eile ezkera, these I remember. I remember you. Ele ezkera. These I remember. Letting memory be a link of connection, of relationship. The second phrase or intention that I want to bring in to partner with memory and memorializing are the words of blessing that are offered for souls who have died, for souls who continue to live on, though the individual has died. The words are Tehe Nishmata, or Nishmato, or Nishmatam, Tzurua B'tzur Chaim. May their soul be bound up in the bond of life. May their souls be inseparably interwoven into the oneness of all life, of limitless being, beyond the limits of living and dying. May their souls be bound into limitless life. Perhaps we can extend that as a blessing as you touch, if there's a name, a face, or as we touch memory and memorializing, maybe we can extend this blessing that weaves together those who have died, those who are bereaved, and those leaning into connection and empathy, to know our beings gathered together under the wings of the Shekhinah, divine presence. May their souls be bound up into the bond of limitless being, all life. Hela eskera. These I remember. As you feel the movement of your own breath, your heart beating, Chaim, aliveness within you, you can extend the blessing. May all souls be inseparably interwoven into the oneness of limitless being, all life. Tonight we'll move into the transition from Yom HaZikaron to Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. Such a potent unfolding, moving from grief to hope, from loss into possibility. And this week's Torah reading is a double portion that resonates with very similar themes, Acharei Mot and Kedoshim. Acharei Mot, which means after the death. It's a reference to the deaths of Aaron's sons Nadav and Avihu. And the second parsha is Kedoshim, meaning holy. And just for the end of our practice, I want to hold the gift that this double parsha is offering. That it poses the question, what comes after death? Acharei Mot. What comes after death? How do we move forward after death? And it answers with practices of holiness, infusing every aspect of our daily lives with waking up, with conscious action, building a life of holiness that's shaped and informed by grief, that's made wiser and more sensitive by it. And that moves forward with instructions for how to avoid unnecessary death, how to cleanse from transgression and mistakes, and hurting others. That includes teachings about not taking vengeance or bearing a grudge, and loving our fellow human beings as ourselves. May we be blessed, my friends, to grow in sensitivity, to grow in wisdom, informed and shaped by the tragic losses of life, so that we live with compassion, with justice, with open hearts. Amen.
Amen. Amen be amen. Thank you so much, Miriam. Friends, we every day we seal our practice by offering an opportunity for those who are in mourning or serving a yard site, or if it's their custom to join in the mourner's cottage, to do so, especially today, as we invite all of you who have called to mind either specific people or those who have died. Invite you as you're moved to do so, to join in the mourner's Kaddish, and thank Jet for sharing the words on the screen. And if you'd like to put the name or names of those you have called to mind through Miriam's beautiful invitation today, or anyone else you're mourning today or in this season, in the chat box now or after we recite Kaddish, you're welcome to do so, and invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit. And you can unmute at this time. Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash, Shemei Rabba, Yama Dibra Tirute, Vich B'chayechon u'v'yomeichem, v'chaye b'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalas ma'kari imru, amen. Yehei Rabba, Barak Olam Hamayah, Yitbarach V'tabach Har V'naseh, Yitadar Yitalel Shemei Kudusha, Ha'ela Mikol B'chata V'shirata V'lechamata Me'am V'yoma V'imru, amen. Shalama Rabba B'chayim Amen. Shalom b'mama. Shalom b'mama. Uyad Leinu V'yakol Yisrael V'yashvei Tevel V'imru, amen.
Amen.
Friends, again, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a beautiful and powerful way to mark this day on our calendar. So I want to thank Rabbi Miriam Margles, for this really exquisite practice that was, I think, perfectly suited for today. And of course, thanks Jet Bachman for holding our tech space with grace and skill, as always. And thank each of you for showing up as you do day after day for our practice together. We hope, if you're leaving us now, we hope to join us tomorrow. As I mentioned, Rabbi Dr. Miriam Neshama Weil will be leading us for Yom HaAtzmaut practice, leading us from Tel Aviv. I believe that's where she'll be. And we very much look forward to that. And if you're staying on, you're welcome just to stay with your practice. Stay in this practice of remembrance and connection, and to use the time in this community as a container for that practice. Or if you'd like to share reflections or on your experience, or ask a question for Miriam on today's teaching, you're welcome to do so in the chat. And if you would, if it's a question, if you would preface it by writing question in all caps, it makes it a little bit easier to keep tabs on the questions. Well, as I said, Miriam, I can't think of for myself a better way to mark this moment than how you just did that. That was just beautiful and just right. I don't want to, if I might, without getting too personal, ask you, we always say like it's an opportunity to share reflections on the practice. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to share, if you would, about what came up for you in this, as you were thinking about putting this together and how to do this. But actually more like in the practice itself, are there specific people you were recalling and communing with, connecting with, and enlivening, I guess, that the beautiful phrasing of the prayer, from El Male Rachamim, that their souls be entwined, with life in a way that makes them very present. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mark. It's interesting. I had been preparing and thinking about what kind of practice I might want to lead today. And I felt quite disconnected from Yom HaZikaron and from Israel and there's so many complex feelings in relationship to what is kind of exploding there right now. And is always difficult and not whole, not equitable and peaceful. And it wasn't until I was watching the joint ceremony, the memorial ceremony, that one of the organizations that puts it on is the Bereaved Families Forum. And it wasn't until I was hearing the stories of both Israelis and Palestinians that, first of all, my heart cracked open. So I guess the first thing that I want to say is I don't want to lead practice unless its truth and reality is alive in me. So I'm so grateful for the stories that were shared. I don't have direct family or specific individuals that I know who have died in the conflict, but I lived in Israel for 4 years over time, and I spent significant time in Palestine as well as in Israel, and everybody has been affected by generations of war and conflict. And so I think the practice is, to the best of my ability, to open my heart to those realities, not to be sunk by them and not to become hopeless because of them, but for the humanity and the heartbreak of all the realities and the experiences that are there, to then inform, what choices do I make? How do I work for peace, for connection, for justice? And I guess maybe the last thing to say, just while I was sitting here, it's so moving to do this practice in this community. That this isn't about putting up one flag or another flag, or I'm sure we are a very diverse group of different experiences and relationships to Israel, to Israelis, to Palestinians. to be able to practice together, um, I really felt the support and holding of that, of being able to be present with the truths of our experiences, to touch where what we're ignorant of. We know our own experiences. And part of, I think, mindfulness practice also opens the curiosity and questions of what am I ignorant of as well. So I'm very grateful to this community for our practice together.
Thank you for sharing that, all of that. Like I would say the same for me, that I felt aware of, I guess I also felt aware of kind of the protective wall that keeps the grief at bay, keeps the sadness at bay, and letting that melt a little bit, to just touch, the truth of loss, and in a way, once we kind of get into the political realm, or right, the problem solving realm, it's a different realm. This is just a realm of experiencing, like you said, what is true, and feeling the immensity of the heartbreak of, and so it leads me to the second question, which is that you let us, from this kind of awareness, this moment of remembering, which in this particular case, remembering something that is to acknowledge that heartbreak, and then move into a prayer that is really a kind of a comforting prayer, right? That to move from the heartbreak of loss and death into a prayer that's about something that I don't know if I would say transcends, but that is kind of collapses that dichotomy between life and death. There's a sense of presence. And there's so much of that in Judaism, I think. Kaddish is really an opportunity to do that. I think, many people like to say that, death and mourning is something that our tradition, does well, right, in that way. I don't know if you want to add anything on that, about the kind of it adds to me. It feels like a kind of like open. It makes us aware, or I'll speak for myself. Makes me aware of the wound, and kind of is willing to open the wound in a way that lets it be more amenable to some healing. And I guess I would think of that prayer as, comforting, healing, as part of how our tradition approaches loss. And then I also loved, the connection with the Parsha, with Acharei Mot, and these, the death of the people who are not familiar, sudden, inexplicable, horrific death of two of Aaron's sons, kind of in a moment of joy, really, right? And then what it follows, as you described, is passages about cultivating practices for cultivating holiness and connection and healing and forgiveness. The Yom Kippur rituals in that Torah portion too. So what do you think about the flow, just in terms of thinking about a spiritual flow that the tradition seems to prescribe, of moving from grief into healing, into something else? Of course, we're also in this Omer period, which is associated with kind of a semi-grieving period as well.
Yeah. I find there to be such deep intelligence in the movement into the grief and sadness, to then move from a very different place into conversations about what is holiness? What does it mean to live a life that takes responsibility for the messes that we make, that continues to seek repair, healing in ourselves and with others. That it's not up in the clouds, it's not abstract, it's not, it's deeply, it has its feet in the muck. Um, uh, and doesn't get stuck there. That I think that's such a challenge, and such a so much at the heart of what spiritual practice I think is seeking to engage. How do we live with our hearts open to everything, and to move with attuned wisdom? We can't skip to the all being is one. It's all limitless, non-duality, um, uh, without also being fully in the separation and duality that exists in this form and in this, in at least one aspect, one experience of this being, in which there is life and there's death, and there's wound and there's healing, and there's you and your experiences and me and my experiences, and how we seek to open ourselves to one another and honor each other. And I think through that, we start to touch and taste the non duality, the chaim, the life that is all limitless being. But it's in and through the particular, and we help each other find it and see it and know it.
That is just so beautifully said, Miriam. And whenever you leave it there, for condolences, Elena, I see of your loss, and want to extend our condolences to you. And today, especially, for our prayer that all those that the brokenhearted find healing and comfort and hope. And thank you, Miriam, for this very, very beautiful practice today. Everyone, I think, deeply appreciates it. A great way for us to mark to this today. And thanks, Jet. Thank each of you for being here. We hope to see you tomorrow for practice with Miriam Neshama Weil.